I will share the link of the stream in the Facebook group, and I will share it in the Discord as well. It won't be long before we finale start. We are almost ready. Now I will share on the Discord the link. What is going on? Oh, okay. Here we go. So we are set. Yeah. Here. I will start the recording because I will also re-upload the stream after that. After that, I will re-upload the stream. So let's do this. Hi, this is Master Kantbei, and we get a guest we already had on the channel many times over. You can now present yourself.
Hey everyone, it's Kantbei here. I'm a fairly high-level fog player. Here again to share my thoughts on this fog map.
So perfect. I think the website is still broken, so I don't know if you remember how we made it work last time. But basically, we click on next action, and then instead of next action, we do next turn once all the moves are done on one side to make sure the website doesn't crash.
Alright, sounds good to me.
Perfect, you are now in charge, I think. Do you have mouse control?
I do.
Perfect, let's do this.
So first of all, why did you decide to pick Sasha on this map, I guess?
I actually like Sasha a lot, and I didn't know what seal you would pick. I was a bit afraid of another grid, because I already fought your grid, and I knew you had a good grid, so I was like, maybe it will be grids, but I didn't pick Javier because I was also scared of you using Javier, so I was like, I will use a seal I don't expect him to use. So I basically picked Sasha because I'm like, I don't think he will use Sasha, so I will use Sasha.
Alright, so well, from my end, like, I was thinking, Grid's probably not actually playable here. It's a double airport map, which makes him pretty bad, and, like, it's, the map's just too open, I think. I don't think Grid can be played, like, if your opponent knows what he's doing. Sturm is a very popular pick here, and for good reason. I think Sturm is pretty good here. I think he should probably be like the default pick if you're not sure what you're gonna do. I picked Javier actually thinking that you would go Sturm, because I know like you always say Sturm. So like I was kind of expecting you to go Sturm, and then Javier is kind of a natural counter to Sturm in the same way that 1-Volt is, because Sturm really hates fighting into plus defense. Like his 80% firepower really shows there. Like if Javier or One Bolt ever park like a unit on a city, Sturm takes forever to dislodge them. The other thing is like in the Javier versus Sturm matchup, Sturm's real game plan is just basically like try to deny his tower, which obviously you can't do here because the tower is like blocked, right? It's an island. So there's obviously no way to deny the tower. And Sturm's other game plan versus One Bolt, for example, would be to like use indirects, but obviously that also doesn't work versus Javier because of his day-to-day power. So like Sturm versus Javier, if Sturm can't deny Javier's towers, Sturm just cries a lot unless like he gets a huge economic advantage somehow, right? But if the game proceeds like somewhat even, Javier should just stomp him usually.
Yeah.
The other CO I like picking here is Hawk because of like the super high income, which makes it fairly easy to get like the powers up, and like mass damage is always good. Von Bolt is like always solid, so like there's really nothing. I don't think there's any map really where Von Bolt is not playable. Sasha is surprisingly the only CO I would never pick on this map.
Why?
Because the income is too high that like Sasha doesn't shut down Hawk, which is like usually who you'd pick Sasha into, right? Like that's who you want to fight. Javier and Sturm are both. Javier, Sturm, and Von Bolt are all like really okay here, which means Sasha is also not great into like any of them. The double airport is nice though, I will say. Like that's one thing that she has going for her because the income is so high. She can realistically spam double copters every turn here, along with like a tank, and still be fine. But in general, like I don't think she has enough going for her here. And she's always, like, in my opinion, fairly hard to pull off in Fog at high level T1 because it's hard for her to close out the game versus anyone. Even versus Hawk, it's not trivial for her to win. I've generally shifted away from picking Sasha.
I think Sasha is the weakest tier 1. No, actually, I think I'd rather pick Sasha over Hawk. But here again, Hawk on longer game will always win because global damage break the game. But I think Sasha and Hawk are like the weakest among tier 1. Now Grit is probably the most even to Sasha, so I think like they are like the bottom 3, and then there's like Javier and Bumble like on top of that tier, I think. But that's the way I see it, and Sturm is just broken. I haven't chose Sturm because I expected like you choosing one of the seals with defense, and I didn't know which one, and I was like, maybe we'll actually go Og, so I was really afraid of your pick. That's why I didn't pick Sturm, because I felt like you know how to counter Sturm, first of all, and second, maybe you were ready to have your counter Sturm. And Sturm, I think in this map, you will have a very early economy advantage over the other seals because it can break the river and just have a chain that is not natural for other seals. But outside of that, I think he's not that really impressive in this map because there are boats protecting the HQ, and the way I see it, because most of my games in this map end up in a HQ race. So usually we both race the other player, but maybe it's because I'm not high ranked, so I don't know how high level player play this map when they fight each other. But on my realm of players, we actually do an HQ race, and the first one that can blow up the other player boat actually wins. That's the way it goes in my realm. So I really don't know how it goes on your realm. How it goes? How do you perceive like this map?
I actually don't think like an HQ race ever happens at high level, or at least I've never seen it work. The reason is because like the HQ can actually like be fairly easily artillery locked from like pretty far back, which is hard to break, right? It's not trivial. The other thing is like trying to go after the HQ is fighting into like 3 base 2 airport, which is like a really big reinforced advantage. So it's very easy to like just overextend into like trying to do the HQ. And like if you look at the HQ, right, everything surrounding it is shoals, right? So walling for you is really hard. Like even if you're Von Bolt or Javier, you're probably just not gonna be able to wall correctly unless like you already have a winning position anyway. Right? So like the HQ is exposed, but it's not something you play for unless you've already won the game. And I just prefer winning on income rather than winning on HQ because it's less risky to me. Also because like my tactics honestly aren't that great, like my walling isn't that great, so usually these kinds of things fail for me. That's why I see it not as an HQ race. Rather, how I think of this map is it's a damage race. What the damage race means is you're trying to inflict as much damage as possible on your opponent's lander side, while at the same time trying to minimize the damage on your side. And whoever wins that race, like whoever eats the enemy lander side faster than they lose their side, goes into the mid game with a pretty big income advantage. And then of course like the middle two cities next to the HQs are also kind of relevant to that. Like that's also like a small fight that happens, but they're less relevant than the side cities because they're just so much more. The middle cities only become really relevant if the side cities trade off evenly. But there's a secret to that versus like most players, which is basically the day 2 recon that I do on this game.
Okay, that's good to know. So, is there anything else you would like to add before we go any further?
I think that's pretty much it for like the map and the CO selection. So we'll get right into it. First few turns are fairly standard. You know, it's just building infantry, capturing the neutral base. You actually don't go for the neutral base first. You go for a city first. I guess you wanted more income.
Yeah, I learned from our last encounter on tier 1. You basically told me Sasha likes to have early income. What happened? What happened? Oh yeah, I moved the boat. But yeah, you told me the other time early income with Sasha makes her better instead of rushing the base if the base is not that far. Like it's always better for Sasha to just have that early economy going. That's what you told me last time we played. So I kept your advice in mind each time I picked Sasha since our encounter. I captured the building before the base because more money and because she is just faster, I guess, if you do such maneuver.
Okay, I mean, I'm gonna have to correct that. So it's true that Sasha does get more of like doing these kind of base skip opens than any other CO because she gets more money. I wouldn't necessarily say that you should always do that all the time. So the way in this map, I think it's actually fine. But the way you calculate that is you have to make sure like the neutral base that you're foregoing a capture is not in charge of a lot of cities itself. And in this map, I don't think like the neutral base does a whole lot of captures by itself. Usually like it's the two starting bases which have to do a lot of the capturing, which is why this is fine. But if this neutral base had like a lot of cities that it had to capture, like for example on Hidden Edge or Splintered, then it's usually better to go for the base immediately because delaying that base delays all your cities that it's supposed to capture by a turn. Right? So that's more than a 1k income disadvantage. You have to count every city that you miss out a turn on, and like that's the combined income that you lost from skipping the base.
Okay, I see. And now I understand more, and I think next time I will play Sasha and Splinter Edge, I will follow what you said. Because I think I don't recall doing Sasha tier with Sasha recently, but next time I will keep that in mind. Thank you very much for the correction.
Alright, so here the one factor of the map that really becomes important here is that there are 2 HQs, meaning you start off with 4k income and not 3k, right? Most maps is 3k. And this is basically what allows me to do a day 2 recon without any base skip. You can do this as any CO, right? Yeah. And because like there's 4k income at the start, all the vehicle timings are actually thrown off. So like if you're just using the usual day 3 recon, day 5 tank kind of like map, you're gonna get caught off guard by all the vehicle timings. Everything arrives so much faster. So I really like day 2 recon on this map because like I said earlier, the map is essentially a corner race, right? Like you have to win, you have to do damage to the enemy corner faster than they can do to yours. and capture more of their cities before they capture yours. So a day 2 recon, basically if their opponent doesn't mirror, will beat the day 3 recon, it will beat no recon, it will beat basically anything except like a tank first opening from the lander side, which is very fast. And there's actually a way to answer this, so this is why this opening isn't broken. There is a way to perfectly tell from like your vision whether I went day 2 recon or not, or at least like you can tell pretty consistently if it's a day 2 recon or not. The way you can answer this, right, is you look at my airport and you look at the timing of my airport. If my airport capture is delayed, super delayed, and you don't see an artillery on the base here at the top that hits your B boat, right?
Yeah.
Then you can fairly confidently say I went day 2 recon or day 3 recon, right? If you see an artillery first, then you can confidently say that I didn't go recon, and then you don't have to tank up. But if you see like no artillery here by like day 4, right? If it's like a day 5 artillery, you pretty much have to buy a tank first, I think. Like you skip the artillery temporarily in order to like get a tank here in order to respond to this. But nobody does that because basically I'm the only person who does this right now. But yeah, that's the answer to this opening, in case people are wondering. Okay, so you capture the city, it's fine. You load your infantry into the lander first. This is actually the correct move in my opinion. Why is this the correct move? Basically, this lander on this entire side here is on a very big time limit of what cities it can capture. So the earlier you get infantry out there, the more cities you can take. If you delay it too long, a day 3 recon will stop it all. Of course, a day 2 recon also stops quite a lot of the capture, so it's a balance of you don't want to overcommit in the mid game, but you also want to commit heavy in the early game. Like my first 2 infantry, I think usually go into the lander. Like I ignore this airport for a very long time because the airport is not contestable, and anyway, you're not going to be able to use it that early on anyway. Like a T-copter open doesn't really do anything here compared to like an artillery or recon, so that's not really such a big factor. Let's go to turn 3 here. So yeah, I go for the base first, pretty standard. Interesting thing to note here, right, is like actually recon from this base, it doesn't matter where you build it from, it will arrive here in roughly about 3 turns anyway. The reason I like building it from this base is because... Yeah, if you're a Storm, it changes, right? But the reason I like building it from this base, people don't see it, and so people don't expect it. That's really the only reason. If ever we hit a stage where like people start to understand that you can find out if there was a recon from this base early on, I would say the recon from this base is much better. Because again, like the lander side usually wants to have more infantry to turbo out these captures. This one, yes, infantry is also important, but it's less important than this one. Like you will always have infantry on this side of the map anyway, towards the mid game. Here you will struggle to get any infantry out later on. So if you know, like this is another layer of like opening mind games. If you know that your opponent knows what the recon opening is and knows the answer to it, then it's better to force out the recon from this side rather than this side. But if they don't know, then it's better to do the recon here if they don't know the answer. Or like if they don't know how to like get the information they need to answer it. Alright, we'll look at your turn. Capturing the base, fairly normal. I think like this infantry would have been better off to this plain tile. The reason for that is just it preserves your strategic options, whether you want to load 2 infantry to the lander next turn, or if you want to go for the capture. Both are available on this tile rather than this tile. You can also do this from here, actually, from this shoals. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not like, you know, losing or anything. It's just like in case you do some potential miscalculation and you want to readjust, then it's always nice to have extra choices. But here, like if you're committed to getting the airport, then it doesn't matter. Like, this doesn't change anything. Okay, you actually go for the city instead of the port. I guess that's fine. Yeah, I think like city versus port is... both are okay. It really depends on like what your next few captures will look like. I think I generally go for the port first, but yeah, I don't think there's like a huge mistake here that we can really talk about.
So my
Oh,
my thought process on going for the building first is the fact that I knew the second infantry would be the last one I ferry on the other side of the map, because later
mm-hmm.
on I would keep ferrying units there, but in the immediate turns, like right now, I only need 2 infantry in the upper part. So if I cap the port, it will slow me down. And for example, I would be forced into using the shoal here instead of the port if I want the city, because the port would be captured. So by leaving the port open this way, I can just drop my infantry there instead of like there.
All right, that's fine. But the thing I'd point out is like if you go for the port first and drop the infantry on the forest with visual, then you can just take the city anyway, right? Like the infantry can reach it.
Yeah.
So in that like variation of captures, it doesn't really change anything that much. The infantry can also go for this, of course, if you wanna use a port in for that, and then this infantry can go for this later on. Like something like this port infantry will go here. So what you did isn't wrong. I'm just saying like the other option is not any worse. So they're both like equally viable. The one thing I will note, right, like you have to constantly moving your recon back and forth. I think, just to like get information on my builds, especially like day 4 is a pretty critical build on this map, like to see if I went artillery or not. So yeah, you constantly want to be eyeing my build from this base, as well as my capture timing on this airport. Once you know like my capture timing on this airport, you don't really need to look at it that much. This base is more important.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do the exact same thing. So like I move my infantry here to position option. I move my recon forward, and then I get an artillery. Oh, I can get an artillery day 4 here anyway. This is weird. Maybe it should be like day 3 artillery then. I'm not too sure about that, but yeah.
You are player 1. So
That's
yes,
true. That's true.
Day 3.
All right. Do some captures. Fairly normal stuff for you, I think. You get an infantry. You unload again, like you said you would. Okay, this is very weird for you. You get a second artillery. I'm actually not too sure why you would do that, because you're fighting Javier. So Javier is a natural counter to artillery anyway. Getting 1 or 2 is fine, I think, but like generally speaking, if you don't have to get artillery versus Javier, you normally won't. So like you only really need the artillery right to clear this revolt, maybe to clear this recon, but it's somewhat better for the artillery you use to clear this to come from this base, because it will arrive faster, or like it will arrive at the same turn. Like this won't get here any faster anyway, so you can just delay the artillery here, maybe get another infantry to increase your captures, or like a tank or a recon to harass this side, and then you get the artillery next turn from this base, and it will arrive at the same time to kill this recon, and it will be the same thing. The other thing you can consider instead of artillery to clear the recon is copter, but your airport is also pretty late, so I can understand why you went artillery. But yeah, those are just like kind of like different variations you can do in this kind of like idea of how to clear the recon. If I'm playing as Andy here, I almost always go for copter to clear this. The thing is, like, if you're Andy, it's fine if your copter takes some chip damage, because you're gonna heal it up anyway. And probably like losing 1 HP of copter health is not gonna change anything, right? Like it will still die to an AA. It will still survive versus another copter, so it doesn't change anything there. And like it's just extra chip damage on your copter when it doesn't matter. It's nice because it boosts up your charge, right? It makes your superpower arrive much faster.
And another reason why I bought a second artillery is, as I said, in my realm of player, usually this map end up in HQ race each time we play this map. I didn't know it was bad in this map until you told me in higher level player they don't do that, but in lower level player it's always HQ race. Like 90% of my wins are HQ race wins, and 90% of my defeats are HQ race. So, so in my mind, it's I need a lot of artillery to blow up your boat, like 3 artillery ish. So 2 artillery, 1 for the recon, 1 for the black boat. And I know it's taking forever to kill Javier unit with indirects. So it's only because it's this map, but after you told me it's a bad idea to just HQ race, well, I will know for next time.
Yeah, I think like if you want to clear off the black boat on the HQ, versus Javier, I think I would just go bomb. To be honest, like 2 artillery and a bomber will do the job pretty easily. I think even like bomber, copter, artillery will do the job. So like you can get away with like 1 artillery here. But yeah, like there are just better options, and like the income here is super. So like a bomber is not crazy. I've gone like day 10 bomber, day 12 bomber here. That was of course to answer like a heavy tank, like a fast heavy tank. But I'm just saying like the income makes those kinds of plays possible. So I wouldn't always reach for artillery if you want to do like this kind of HQ pressure kind of style. It's not necessary, right? So like you can just keep your mind open on like what builds are possible, because this map is basically like high fun, to be honest. Getting neo tanks, getting mega tanks is not crazy here. I've never gotten a mega tank yet, but I that it is super viable because of like the lantern. You just turbo out a mega tank to like this forest or this forest, and then it's super scary because it can from reach like this, right? With the +1 boost, it can reach this. I think it can also reach this. So like it's very viable. From here, it basically makes any HQ rush impossible because the mega tank will one-shot any unit right on this area. By clearing this tile or this, if it clears a tile next to the HQ, it makes an interrupt very easy. If it clears this tile, it makes a 2-hit KO on this tile possible, and then you can interrupt the HQ. So, like a mega tank here stops HQ rush in my opinion.
Okay, and I will ask a question a bit off topic, but this question, man, if Advanced Warrior is still on the chat, he will laugh. But he always base skip. What's the best way to punish people who always base skip for like bombers and stuff like that? What's the best way to punish someone that just casually like to base skip just to have like EA tank or medium tank faster? What's the best way to punish them?
So the best answer to that is basically number 1, you have to. By that I mean, if you have an answer or like a way to stop that expensive unit from doing damage, then you've already punished them, right? Because like they have a neo tank, but you have 3 more infantry. Eventually, like your 3 more infantry are worth way more than that neo tank, because unit count advantage, right? Like if that neo tank gets stuck around like infantry because he doesn't have any infantry to kill yours, right? Then what is the neo tank doing? It's killing a 1k unit every turn, and that's all it can do, right? And then like if you have artillery behind that, or copters behind that, or your own neo tank behind that, right? Then it gets punished super hard, because like if it dies, it's just game over. So that's really the punish to it, right? Like you just have to survive, and then if you survive long enough, the build will naturally punish itself. So like these kinds of like base skip styles where you rush out tanks or like rush out a heavy vehicle very fast and you skip builds for it, is a tempo thing, right? So it works if you can get damage done, but if you can't get any damage done, then you've basically thrown away units for free, and your opponent didn't have to do anything; they just had to live. So that's the punish to it.
And I've got another question, like almost the same but not the same. In high-level games, like you, for example, do you see base skipping here and there, and how do you react against another high-level player when you see base skip, or when you realize his unit count may be off the chart?
Right, so base skips do happen at high level. I know like a lot of Chinese players kind of do the base skip style occasionally, not always, right? But they will do it once every so often to throw people off. Starflash 250, who's like really, really strong now in Fog. He beat me recently. Beat me a couple of times actually. So like I think he's gonna be top 10 pretty soon. He's been doing base skip styles quite a bit in Fog and also like some experimenting with it in Standard. So we do see it happen. The response to it is the same thing I just said. It might just be harder to pull off, right? Like the response is basically you have to survive and make sure damage doesn't get done. Whether that means like pulling your army back and like accepting that you have to lose some cities in the short term, or whether that means like starting the base skip yourself to like just match them with tanks. Either of those answers are possible. It really just depends on the board. The one thing you don't want to do is like start a really, really bad engagement where they have more vehicles than you, because that's like the one scenario where their base skipping actually works really well. If you start a trade and if you know like they did base skips, like they have a Neo tank out or they have 2 more tanks than they should, and you start a trade, you're probably gonna lose in the open. It's just generally not possible to fight into that kind of style.
That's very good to know. Thank you very much. So now we can keep going. It's very interesting. So even sometime in high level, guys do that. I'm actually surprised. I was like, in my mind, each time I've seen Advanced Warrior doing it, I was like, if he tries that in high level, he will get crushed. But apparently, it's sometimes working even in high level.
Well, yeah. So the key difference, right, is like at high levels they know how to play very aggressively in a safe manner, right? Like they know how much they can get away with without overextending. At like if a lower level player tried that versus a high level player, chances are they'd overextend and then die, right? But if a high level player does it, they're not gonna overextend. They're gonna know near perfectly how much they can get away with, get as much as they can from the opening, punish you for like whatever mistakes you did, and then like pull back, right? So like they'll know how to play around the style. So it's not as if the style doesn't ever work, but it does kind of require your opponent to play slightly worse than you. But then again, like if you're base skipping, there's a very good chance you catch them off guard anyway, so they might just give those mistakes up to you anyway. But versus like a really solid player, I'd be too scared to do it, to be honest. But yeah, like it does work, right?
Yeah.
Because you're playing against people, not against like Alpha Star Flash 250. So it's not as if you're playing on open AI, right?
Yeah.
they're gonna make mistakes. Okay, so turn 5 for you. You capture the airport, do a bunch of captures, move your artillery back.